Sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
So I happened to catch a video clip this morning in my preparations for talks. And it was a quick clip of a right fielder named Mookie Betts, who plays for the Dodgers. Oh, I love that some people know. Who knows who Mookie Betts is? Look at you gals, who know sports. I had no idea who he was, but I watched the video because it was cool, because it was warm-up before the game. You know who Mookie Betts is, right? Dodgers. So anyways, he was in the right field preparing for the game, and he's throwing it to this kid, or maybe the kid threw the ball to him, who's in the stands, and the kid's like in high school. So the next thing is they start playing catch. And this is not like they're close by. They're far away. And this kid is clearly a very good athlete, probably a star in his high school, because he's totally he's in the zone. He's not flipping out that he's playing catch with Mookie Betts. He's just throwing, catching. And every time he gets it right to Mookie, most kids would be like, he'd be running all over the field to catch the ball, but right to him every single time, back and forth. And then the announcer comes on, the game's going to start, and so all the little people around the guy, he goes, yay, and then he sits down and he just puts his head in his hands. He's like a little boy again, he was so cool. And then he just dissolved this little boy, I just played catch with Mookie Betts. And that's going to be a memory for him for the rest of his life. And the video was 1 minute. I'm sure the whole thing took less than 2 minutes. Oh, hi, I never thought you'd come up and join. Sorry, never do a talk when there's a cat in the house. So, meow, sorry. I'm gonna get back on track. So, but that was just 2 minutes out of Mookie Betts' life. It was a moment of total generosity. He wasn't going to go around thinking, I wonder if I made that kid's life or not. He just played and he left. But that kid's going to remember that forever. A moment of generosity takes so little time. And the extraordinary gift that every one of us have is that we can be that generous self today. We don't have to wait. We don't have to do anything, just as you are. The last sentence in the reading today is, you don't have to change anything, just be who you are. And just one little act of generosity can make someone else's life. And it makes your life, because suddenly you feel like, oh, I'm actually make a difference. I'm not irrelevant or replaceable, because just that little act, no one else could have done that little act today but me. And it's not to build up our ego, but to build up our sense of worth, that you're valuable, that you're important, and to feel it in joy as we get to give. So I'm giving a monthly assignment, and the monthly assignment is to very consciously this month do acts of generosity. We talk about do acts of kindness, do acts of generosity. Use me, allow the Spirit to flow through you, and it could be in a spontaneous moment like that. I don't think either one of them planned to have that moment, but it happened. So to be present, to have that sort of in the forefront of your awareness, not in the back of your awareness, but in the forefront of your awareness all month, is how can I share a moment of generosity, if I can, every day. It doesn't have to be a big thing, and also it's about the place from which it comes, because you can, you might smile at the cashier all the time and engage them, but now doing it with this spirit of whatever we're sharing, I'm sharing intentionally. I'm sharing with my heart wide open. I'm very conscious in this exchange of whatever it is that my heart's wide open, because that open heart makes all the difference in the world. And then for those of you online, because I think I give these homework assignments and there's no follow-up. So I know online you all get into conversations offline. So all month long, I would love you to, throughout the month, talk about moments of generosity that have flown through you, that have been shared through you towards somebody else, not as an ego boost of look how great I am, but when we hear other people's stories, it uplifts. So it's even sharing the act of generosity is an act of generosity. It's not for you, it's for the other person. And then you get to hear someone else's act of generosity and you get to be inspired. We know that there's a domino effect to this, that the more we hear about it and see other people doing it, we tend to get more inspired and want to do it, and it opens up everyone's heart. For those of us here, that circle, the chairs on the carpeting, if you, throughout the rest of this month of June, you want to go and share and hear other people's acts of generosity, go sit in that circle after service, and that's a sacred circle now. We've just made it a sacred circle, and you're not chatting about what you're doing for lunch or how the week is going. The specific purpose when you go into that, sit in those circles, is to share experiences that you've had in the past week of sharing generosity and or receiving generosity, and receiving and hearing other people's acts and receiving of generosity, okay? So this is a homework assignment that there's going to be some follow-up, because it's no fun to do homework if we're not checking in, right? All right. You're right. Thank you. So, acts of generosity. So this month is about the Father's way, and as I explained in the Mother's way, it's not binary, that the masculine and feminine energy moves through all of us in different degrees and forms, and traditional roles were created, but I think very rarely do people stick to one role or the other. Like my parents were very traditional. My dad was the leader, and my mom was secondary, and at the same time my mom had a lot of masculine qualities and my dad had feminine qualities. So it's not, we all have both. So I just decided this year to say, without worrying about if it's masculine or feminine, things that I've learned from my parents. So this month is things I've learned from my father. And the first thing that I learned is that he was a provider, that taking care of his family was extremely important to him. He was the oldest of 4 boys, and when he was 7, his mom unexpectedly died giving childbirth. So his father was a textile worker. He did not graduate from college. His mother did. She actually had been valedictorian of her high school and was a college graduate. But she was gone suddenly, and so he had to raise these 4 boys, figure out how he was going to do that, and because he didn't have education but wanted it, he made that a priority, but money was always an issue. So for my dad, creating economic stability for his family was so important, and that was very clear. He got an education, focused. The guy was an economics major, became a tax lawyer. Everything was sort of revolved around money, and to make sure, he had so many other interests, but that was like, you could see that was what generated him. And both he and my mom grew up in Depression and World War II, so they were very frugal. So money was never an issue, but they were very good stewards of money. And so I just got used to that sort of he was the provider. And what I didn't realize, and again, this is the old model, we live in a different world today, that he raised my brothers that way too. It's so interesting that my oldest brother said, from the time we were little, you have to always be thinking about how you're going to provide for your family. It wasn't, the message I got was, you have to learn how to provide for yourself. Make sure you can take care of yourself as a woman, but it was never, and make sure you can take care of your children or lots of other people, or that never even entered my upbringing, and it was very much a part of theirs. So, and I never thought about this until I read a book decades ago by Warren Farrell, talk about why men are the way they are. And it helped me understand this old system. We're going to catch up to the present day, but in the old system, old ideas, because I know even back then women were working and participating. But he said that there was such a strong emphasis with men is you have to provide. You're important, not just for yourself, but for everybody, for your spouse, for your kids, and you're a failure if you don't. So with that came a lot of stress. And I used to hear I didn't know until I got into these conversations with my brothers, that was always on their mind, like what they were going to do. Well, the reason why I put generosity with this is because for me, there's just a generous way of being That you're not just trying to take care of yourself. The only reason why you want to take care of your family, and this can be moving up to the present day, we know both partners work, a lot of single parents, there's divorce, which adds so much financial challenge. There's so many different changes in the family system, but we still need to, as caregivers, provide financially for our family. And with that comes stress, but also meaning and joy. That I know that though my father worked so hard and always these really long hours and often on weekends, it wasn't because he didn't care about his family, it's because he cared so much. And that if he didn't do it, nobody would. And that was what Warren Farrell was pointing to, is that whoever the provider is, taking it out of male, female, but whoever is the provider, there's a lot of stress with that. Of not just, even if you don't have children, if you're someone who's working, you're going to be providing for somebody. You're providing for people who don't have money. You're providing for nonprofits who need the money. You're providing for other family members who need money. Providing, to me, is an incredibly generous way to live life, that you're not just focusing on taking care of yourself, but allowing the good that is pouring through from what you're giving at work in your job to support other people. Because it's not generous if we're doing it because we have to. Generosity, a key element of generosity is there's a joy to it. There's a meaningfulness to it. And there's a stress. And I think we want to look at both of those, because this is, as we're going through life today, there's just so much stuff about what's happening in our country and our world about finances, and a lot of different opinions about it, but I think because there's so much happening, change happening, whether it's good or bad, it's causing stress. And there's stress about, can I financially take care of myself, let alone other people? And can I take care of myself when I'm older? As I move into my retirement years, or I'm already in my retirement years, can I continue to take care of myself in my retirement years? There's a lot of stress that comes with it, that comes with this idea of providing. And that's where the idea of spiritual principle comes in handy. So the thing that my dad didn't have was any support. He wasn't getting it from his parents. We were in Ohio, none of his siblings were around. He was not a guy who had hung out with friends. So either he did it or nobody did it. And then that, as a family, say, well, either he's doing it or what are we going to do if something happens to my dad? Like, he's our source. So he feels entirely responsible, and we feel he's entirely responsible growing up. And that leads to constriction. Kind of. I mean, he did. I'm grateful that he was able to do it well, so we felt safe. We felt safe as long as he was safe. But it all depended on this worldly things. When we start looking at spiritual principle, that's when we can start opening our heart and feeling a little bit safe, even when we shouldn't feel safe. Even when the effects of the world are not working for us. Single parenting, losing a job, being in between work, economic strife that's happening culturally of which you have no control over whatsoever. All of these elements that happen in our life, when we know who Spirit is and we know our connection to Spirit, suddenly we can relax a little bit and trust something greater. So here's the spiritual principle. I know I'm looking out at all of you, and I know all of you know the spiritual principles, but it's just a reminder. Spirit is infinite. It doesn't ever stop. It doesn't have a limitation. It doesn't have a depression. What was that? The Great Depression. It doesn't lose money. It doesn't lose its abundance ever. It doesn't lose its infinite supply. Joel Goldsmith actually does focus on infinite supply, that it's not just about money, but it's just the infinite supply. We talk about that in our classes. It's not just abundance. I'm focusing on money because I think it is a huge deal. You need money to survive, so every one of us has to deal with money. So it's an important thing. But it's the infinite supply that's always being poured, and it never stops. And so if our anything in the world of effect, so what we're living in here, anything you can see, taste, hear, touch, hear, or smell, your jobs, your family, wherever you primarily get your sustenance for life, your supply, that's still all in the world of effect. And if you have to hold on to that for your good, you're going to start constricting. I love my dad, but this was such a lesson for me. I don't like using it, but it was so as an atheist and an incredible provider, blah, blah, blah. But by the time he was moving on to the next life, he was so constricted. He was like, and I just thought, like there wasn't this. I'm open. I just know Spirit's great, and it's going to continue to be great. And even when my parents got separated, so much constriction because everything had to be in the perfect way in order for him to feel safe. And without that, he couldn't open his heart. And generosity, which is the most joyful way to live life. We are generous when we feel the overflow. We are not generous. If I'm constricted and I'm just like, I think I'm going to give it to you, that's not generosity. That's sort of forced giving. Generosity is joyful. It is open. It is knowing that the presence and the power of pure Spirit is your life now. Not more tomorrow, not more the next day, not when you get your job raise or find a job or whatever it is that you look to your source in the world of effect. But right now, that infinite abundance is your source here and now. And that takes time. It takes time to develop that connection with Spirit. That's why we teach prosperity classes. We used to have them every month. Well, we're going to get back to that because we need it in our culture because there's so much lack. There's so much idea of lack out there, and it's hard not to catch that idea. No matter how much you know Spirit, when we are surrounded in this cultural of lack and fear and terror, it constricts us, and we can't access this incredible supply that's always available to us. Because the only way we access this incredible supply is as we open our heart, as we learn to trust, as we learn to step out a little bit more, that it's not all about what I do, but use me. It's about this incredible, infinite life that is always giving of itself, that is infinitely generous. I remember Michael Beck was saying, you can never outgive God, because God is infinite and always giving itself into form, always, even now, no matter what's happening in the world. One of the greatest things that I remember that I learned from him and still is with me, he said, mostly what we hear in the news is the status quo. It's the average energy that's happening in the cultural world, and we are all recipients of that status quo until we step out consciously and say, no, I am the life of God. The moment you start practicing that I am the life of God, that I am the source of the infinite Spirit, of pure Spirit moving through and as me, I have now moved out of the status quo. So all those articles that we read, all those horrible things that are happening, they're not happening to us if we know who and what we are. Or if they are happening to us, we stay strong in that who and what we are, and things start to shift around us. I think of Joel Goldsmith, who has this incredibly prosperous life. But before he got there, he was learning these principles, that God was his source, and it was during the Great, he just became a practitioner right as the stock market crashed in 1929, and he was homeless, and he was sleeping outside because he had no place to go, and he had no money. But the thing he never stopped was practicing the principles. Okay, this is my temporary fact, but I'm staying, and he kept working on the principles. Nope. God is infinite supply, and his life shifted. And he said it went back and forth for a little bit till it was just prosperous for the rest of his life. Because every time the world of effects said, no, you're not, you don't have any money, there's no prosperity here. Nobody could do it for him. He had to claim and know what was true for him, that he is the power and the presence of pure Spirit. Move out of the status quo, move out of what was happening, that this is your reality. No, when God is my reality, I am open to this infinite good that I can't explain. I don't know where it comes from. Things start to happen and unfold of which we cannot humanly figure out. When I applied for my first job, when I was working at the psychiatric, it was before I was working at the psychiatric hospital, they were having layoffs all across, this is in DC, they were having layoffs in the hospitals. And I told my dad's neighbor, oh, I'm going to apply for a job at the hospital. And they're like, oh no, this is the worst time to apply for a job. The staffs are all getting laid off in huge numbers. And I remember looking at them in my head, I didn't argue with them, I just in my head said, cancel, 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 cancel. I know what Spirit's leading me to do. And I know that that's what's happening culturally in DC areas and all the headlines, it's on the news. I just kept turning within. Nope, God is my source, God is my source, God is my source. And I barely even had to apply. They just hired me like that. And why this is important is because to live a generous life, we have to know that it's not our generosity. It's not me, Harriet, being generous with you. It's the divine presence being generous with itself through me to you. And that's where the joy comes. If it becomes all about me again, then I get constricted. There is nothing more joyful than to feel the infinite good of God pouring through you and to share it with every person you know. Mookie Betts didn't have to he got nothing from throwing that, well, he might have gotten something, but throwing that baseball. But it was the joy of expressing and sharing that moment with somebody else that he's never shared it with before. That's joyful. Generosity is the most joyful way to live. It opens our heart. I think of Sarah Blakely. Sarah Blakely grew up with a dad who loved people to try things and be adventurous. So what they used to do at the dinner table every night, and I wish I had done this, but it takes a certain amount of courage. Every night at dinner, he asked his kids, what did you fail at today? Every day he asked them, what did you fail at today? And if they didn't fail at anything, he would feel like they missed out on, because they didn't try something new. Oh no, you had to have tried something. And sometimes they had successes, but whenever they failed, they'd all go, yay, they failed. And there became this fearlessness around failure, and became a fearlessness around pushing out beyond the borders of their comfort zone, about pushing, because failure isn't, if you learn the spiritual principles, you can't fail. And she loved the teachings of Wayne Dyer, so she's learning that, which is basically our teaching, learning these principles of the Spirit always working through and as us. So she's hearing these principles and learning these principles, embracing failure, trying things all the time and failing and feeling, cool, I tried something new, woohoo, and had the support of her little family cheering her on. And so one day her idea worked, and now she's a billionaire. She created Spanx. So she's as the creator of Spanx, and she just came out with a new thing. I don't know if it's going to be that successful, so it might be a stepping out in failure or not, but she's so full of joy, and she shares her new invention, for those of you who don't know, is she created sneaker heels, and she wears them everywhere. She goes, I wanted to have the comfort of a sneaker, but have a little style. So I don't know, she wears them everywhere, her kids wear them, I don't know. But that's the point. She keeps generating. She gives so much money and support to other women inventors. She lives a big life. She's married to, someone who's also always creating. It's just this constant generating of joy in fearlessness. It's a way of life. It's not that she has $1 billion. It's the fact that she's just embraced a way of life of exploring, of adventure and fearless. That's a generous way of being. And everything that she does, she shares. She shares, and she shares yet again. So one way to access this infinite generosity, and there's a million ways which you're going to be doing this month. You're going to be doing a million new ways of generosity. I've done it. I had a friend who was really big in this, and I was reading her book recently, well, like a year ago. And I wasn't even consciously trying, but suddenly all these opportunities to step past myself and be of assistance to somebody who I didn't even know. And they would happen, and it felt magical. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just being nice. It wasn't that. It was like opening myself up to this spiritual presence and this act of, they need my help, I can give help. It wasn't of me. The whole situation wasn't of me, it lasted. The joy of it, the feeling tone of it, it was incredible. It happens, the more we set our intention to allow that generosity to move through us, we'll start seeing those opportunities. You're going to start seeing, I know you all practice this, but we're doing this as a community, that collective energy of sharing that generosity, and that energy grows. Generosity is the most life-giving force we could have, and it's not about us. So for me, one of the ways I do it financially, ways that I experience joy, and I never learned it till I came to New Thought, is tithing. Now, there's an incredible practice that I love in the Western, or at least I haven't lived in any other country, in giving to nonprofits, especially at the end of the year. My parents always sat down, all the money they would give to nonprofits, you give to people who need it. But there's something specific about tithing, and it comes from one little section in the Old Testament, but that's not why I do it. Well, that's the first reason, but the idea is you give 10% of what you give to a place, to your spiritual source. So that is not people who are impoverished. And I played with it, and I did it all privately, because people can get pretty aggressive about tithing. Tithe 10%, or if you don't, this is how you make more money. You get the law of circulation going, and the more you give back, which I hated because that felt very transactional. I'm giving to get back, and that didn't feel good. So over the years, what I've learned about tithing is it is giving to my spiritual source. I'm coming from within, and I'm giving to within. And it feels so good to give back, because I get so much spiritually. I get so much every single day spiritually. And it allows me to give to sources that feed me spiritually, and I don't need anything back from them. An essential part of generosity is you're not holding on. If you're holding on, that's not generosity. That's fear, or a should, or a duty, or obedience. And you don't have to do 10%, whatever fits, but the idea of giving to your spiritual source, and the spiritual source is always inside, but it's reflecting something inside of you. And the joy I get from that reminds me of how extraordinary a gift that every one of us has to give, including financially. We forget financially, especially now when things are getting tighter, and there's like, well, I better hold on because we don't know what 5 months is going to. And I'm just saying that in my own head. Oh, I don't know where this country's going. I should probably maybe shore up my finances, because 5 months from now, who knows? But I can't do that when I know that I'm the life of pure spirit. The tithing reminds me financially, and I'm just using financially because, like I said, I think that's a big one, and a big one I learned from my dad, that God is my source financially, and there's nothing in the world that's reminding me of that. Nothing in the world that is telling me God is my source of finances. Everything in the world is telling me the world is the source of my finances. What's happening in the world, my job, what everything is. And so tithing is my way to remind myself my financial life. God is the source of my finances. It is the source of everything, of all my good. It is a source of everything that I love and appreciate and I'm grateful for. And I am so grateful for how much the infinite is giving me every single day, to be able to give back, to be able to return a little tiny bit to that infinite source of good. It's the greatest joy. It's my favorite thing, when it's my time to tithe twice a month, every month. Pure joy. Generosity, the infinite flow, the flow of the infinite. That's what the title was. Generosity, the flow of the infinite. Let's practice this month. Everyone's going to have it different. I'm just sharing how it shows up, thoughts that I have about it, financially, tithing. But each and every one of you are going to show up in that circle sometimes during this month online and talk about stories of you having this opportunity to be generous with somebody else, going a little bit out of your comfort zone or a little out of your way, consciously knowing that the divine presence is working through you. You don't want anything from this person. You're just giving because you feel so much joy in that ability that you have something to give that they need. And you're so grateful that you have that good that you can give. And we're going to share these stories and allow that energy to increase all month long. Are you with me? Are you going to be doing this? You're going to be doing this online? I can't wait. I can't wait to hear your stories. This is so good. All right, I love you all so much, and I can't wait to hear your stories. Because, just have to say this last thing, because you are all very conscious beings. I am in the room and online with extraordinarily conscious beings. And I forget that sometimes. Like, I take this for granted. This is my world, so I'm with you all the time. And then I step a little bit outside this world, and I forget so many people have no idea what all you know. And I'm just so grateful that all of you extraordinary beings are going out to the world. I know you already are. I'm talking about like you've never done this before. We're just doing it again, collectively. You're going out into the world with people who don't know who they are, who don't remember who they are, and you're sharing from your heart, from the infinite good that you are, the God self in you sharing with them. And I'm just so grateful to you. So grateful. Let's pray. This is love. This is what love is. This is what love is. As we feel this beautiful, loving presence at the center of our being, we surrender everything to that presence of love. We know that this love is infinitely generous with all creation, not with just some aspects of creation, with all creation. And we get to be a vehicle of this love. What a gift. What a gift we all have. We are the vehicle of pure love, of this infinite oceanic love, this love that is so vast that we can't even begin to describe it. It's the most pure, unlimited love that transcends all time and all space, and it is moving through and as into form through each and every one of us, through this extraordinary generosity of heart, generosity towards ourselves, generosity towards our loved ones, generosity towards spirit, towards strangers, generosity. Everywhere we go, this is love in form, and we are the beautiful vehicles of this love. It is healing us. It is healing us. It is healing us, returning us to our true nature, to our true self. This is what it looks like and feels like to be heaven on earth, to be love in form, as you, as me, and as all life. In gratitude, we let this be. And I invite you to join me in saying, and so it is. So it is. Amen and amen.
I walk in God in all